There's this quiet little lie about getting older no one bothers to mention when you're in your 20s. We are all basically taught that confidence is a permanent installation, that it is this rock solid thing you earn early on, you put it on a mental shelf in the garage, and then you just get to coast on it for the rest of your days. But it's not. It comes and goes. Sometimes it feels incredibly solid, like a thick, heavy brick wall that nothing could ever knock over. And then other times, it's a whole lot more like a cheap game of Jenga. You make one wrong move, you pull the wrong wooden piece out of the stack, and the entire structure just wobbles. Major life changes are usually the thing that grabs that wall and shakes it until it feels like nothing but dust and rubble. By the end of our time today, I want you to understand why trying to bounce back to who you were is actually keeping you stuck, and how to start laying a foundation for the man you are right now. Maybe it's a rough divorce, or losing a job you thought was going to carry you all the way to the finish line. It could be the kids finally packing up and leaving the house empty, hitting retirement, or even just trying to find your physical feet again after a serious illness. You go from knowing exactly who you are, knowing your morning routine's cold, to just staring at the bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning with the water running, wondering, okay, now what? The ground that felt like poured concrete yesterday suddenly feels like loose quicksand. Everything that used to be completely automatic, just getting out the front door, making a pot of black coffee, answering the phone, now takes this exhausting, conscious, heavy effort. I have been in that exact spot. After my divorce, my confidence wasn't just running low, it was gone, completely absent. I felt like somebody had hit a hard reset on my entire life, but they forgot to hand me the new instruction manual. Just walking into a normal, everyday social event by myself felt genuinely terrifying. But honestly, it was the small, mundane stuff that really broke me down. Paying the monthly utility bill solo. Trying to fix a leaky kitchen faucet on a quiet Tuesday night when the house was completely dead silent. I remember standing in the plumbing aisle of the local hardware store. The smell of PVC glue and cut pine in the air. The fluorescent lights humming overhead, giving me a headache. I was just staring at this plastic bin of 3/4-inch brass fittings. I had no idea what I was looking at. I felt like an absolute imposter in my own life. Like I'd somehow missed the fundamental class on how to be a functioning adult. And the worst part of it all? It was that quiet, internal voice in my head that just kept asking, how did I end up here? And it wasn't asking in a curious way. It was disappointed, accusatory, like I had failed some basic, fundamental test. I'd sit there in a quiet living room, watching buddies post pictures of their 15-year anniversaries or big family vacations online. Meanwhile, I was standing in a kitchen, trying to figure out how to cook dinner for just one person without making a mess of the pans, and pretending I was doing just fine whenever anybody at the shop asked how I was holding up. We live in a world that is completely obsessed with this idea of forced resilience. But I need to be completely honest with you. You do not bounce back from major life changes. You don't just hit a reset button and return to factory settings like a piece of broken electronics. You rebuild. And that new structure, it's going to look different than the old one. Sometimes it's actually better.
It might be stronger in places you didn't expect. A little more flexible. Or maybe just a lot more honest about its own limitations.
But that pressure to fix it fast, man, it is everywhere. Well-meaning friends love to slap you on the shoulder and say things like, "You'll get through this," or "Everything happens for a reason." They mean well. They really do, but sometimes you don't need a cheerleader. You just need another guy to look at the mess with you and acknowledge that, yes, this is incredibly hard. Yes, it's okay to feel completely lost right now. Yes, it takes serious time to rebuild yourself. And no, there is no official timeline for getting it done. I had a colleague a while back. She got laid off from a job she had held for 15 straight years. She told me the hardest part wasn't walking out of the lobby with a cardboard box full of desk supplies, or even missing the steady paycheck. It was losing the entire identity that came attached to that title. Who was she if she wasn't the marketing director anymore? What were her days even supposed to look like without the constant grinding rhythm of meetings and deadlines pushing her forward? She spent weeks just crushing herself with this intense pressure, convinced she should already be over the shock, that she should already be moving on to the next big thing. But that's just not how any of this actually works. Here is the reality of the situation. Confidence doesn't come back all at once in some big movie montage moment. It comes back in tiny, quiet little wins. It's the first time you handle a problem you were dead sure you couldn't fix. It's the first time you finally say yes to something that scares the hell out of you. Or, and this is a big one, saying no to a situation that just drains the absolute life out of you. It's the first time you actually laugh again. I mean, really laugh. Not that polite, tight little chuckle you fake during a phone call. For me, one of those first real wins was booking a solo trip. Just a short flight to visit an old buddy in another state. It sounds ridiculous, maybe. Just a weekend flight. But it meant I had to pack my own bag and navigate the airport crowds entirely by myself. I had to manage my own schedule. I was responsible to absolutely no one but me. I remember sitting in that cramped airplane seat, smelling the jet fuel bleeding into the cabin, feeling the massive engines vibrating through the thin floorboards, and thinking, I'm doing this. I am actually doing this. Look, I wasn't climbing Mount Everest. But on that Tuesday, at 30,000 feet, it sure felt like I was. Another win happened when I finally stopped apologizing for just taking up space in the world. One evening, I just ordered exactly what I wanted to eat, and I talked to the stranger sitting next to me at the bar. I took up space, and nothing collapsed. The world just kept right on turning. Think back to when you were a kid, learning to ride a bike. You didn't just hop on the leather seat and pedal off into the sunset on the first try. You wobbled. You fell over into the dirt. You got back on the seat. And somewhere in the middle of all those scraped knees and failed attempts, something in your brain just clicked. Your body remembered how to balance. Confidence is exactly the same mechanism. It is muscle memory for your sense of self. And yeah, some days you are still going to feel shaky. That is entirely normal. True confidence isn't about never having a doubt in your head. It's about figuring out how to keep your boots moving forward, even when that doubt is whispering right in your ear. It's about feeling that familiar wobble and just thinking to yourself, all right, today is a wobble day. Without spiraling and making it mean something catastrophic about your overall progress. I still get hit with it. Just last month, I had to go to this crowded networking event. Walked in the room, heard the ice clinking in glasses, and instantly felt that familiar heavy tightness right in the center of my chest.
That intense, primitive urge to just turn around, walk to my truck, and leave early. But instead of letting that feeling take the wheel, I just stopped. I acknowledged it. I told myself, okay, you're feeling anxious. That is allowed. And then I stayed for another 20 minutes. Just 20. And that was enough for that night. The wobbles are temporary. They don't define who I am anymore. They are just weather patterns moving through the valley. They are not permanent conditions. You know what really helps take the edge off? Just remembering that absolutely everyone is faking it, at least a little bit. That guy who looks bulletproof at the neighborhood barbecue, he's probably sweating through his shirt, worried that his small talk is boring everyone to tears. That sharp entrepreneur posting his massive success online, he's probably staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m, stressing over next month's numbers. We are all just out here doing the best we can with the battered tools we've got in the box.
Looking back, rebuilding my confidence really came down to 3 things: changing who I thought I had to be, talking to myself like a human being, and stacking one small brick at a time. The dam finally broke when I stopped asking how to go backward. I started asking, who do I actually want to become now? Because maybe that old version of you is just gone. And maybe that is entirely okay. Maybe you get to build a new one that's sharper, a little more weathered, sure, but a lot more honest. I burned months trying to perfectly recreate my old life, my old routines, my old sense of pride. But there was no back to normal. That normal was gone. When I finally started asking who I wanted to become, it was like someone unlocked a heavy door. I finally had permission to try new things, to start looking people in the eye and saying no to obligations that just felt like dead weight, to build friendships based on the guy I actually am today, not the guy I thought I was supposed to be 10 years ago. I figured out that I actually enjoy my own company, that sitting alone in a quiet room isn't loneliness. It's just space. Space to finally hear yourself think. There is a massive freedom in starting over. Once you accept that you aren't required to rebuild the exact same house that just burned down, you can pour an entirely new foundation, something that fits the man you're turning into instead of the ghost you used to be. If I could somehow pull my truck over, walk back in time, and talk to myself during those early, shaky months, I'd give myself one piece of advice. Be kinder to yourself. Talk to the guy in the mirror the exact same way you would talk to a good buddy who was going through the same ringer. If your best friend was sitting at your kitchen table, staring at his hands, you wouldn't tell him he's pathetic for struggling. You wouldn't tell him he should have it all figured out by now, or that his pain is just some dramatic overreaction. You would sit there, pour him a cup of black coffee, push it across the table, and offer a little patience, a little genuine understanding. Look, giving yourself some grace isn't self-indulgence. It isn't making weak excuses, and it's not wallowing in the mud. It is simply looking at the reality of the situation and admitting that being a human being is damn hard sometimes. That big life changes will legitimately knock the wind out of your lungs. And that you are currently doing the absolute best you can with the limited fuel you have left in the tank. It's giving yourself a nod of respect just for showing up, for trying, for refusing to quit even when the brutal math says you probably should. I'll shoot straight with you.
That is probably the most critical piece of this entire operation. Because you can stack bricks all day long, but if you're standing there swinging a sledgehammer at your own foundation while you do it, you're just making this a whole lot harder than it has to be. So, if you were standing in the middle of your own rubble right now, looking at the mess, wondering how your legs are ever going to feel steady under you again, do not put a gun to your head and demand that you rebuild the entire wall by sundown today. Just pick up one brick, stack it, then find another one. Maybe your brick for today is just putting your work boots on and taking a hot shower. Maybe it's sitting down at the kitchen table and sending an email you've been avoiding for weeks. Maybe it's finally asking another man for some help when you know you're drowning. Or maybe it's literally just making it to bedtime without coming unglued. Every single one of those bricks matters. Every tiny action is physical proof that you are still in the fight. You are still capable. You are still moving forward. And yeah, some of those bricks are going to sit a little crooked. Some won't fit quite right. Some days you might accidentally kick over the little wall you built yesterday. That is the job. That is the process. You aren't building a pristine museum display that has to pass an inspection. You are just building a life that you can actually survive in.
And man, I really wish someone had sat me down and told me this years ago. Rebuilding does not mean you have to do it alone. Ask for a hand. Lean on the guys around you. Let them carry a brick or two when your shoulders are shot and too heavy to lift. They don't hand out medals for suffering in silence. So, here's where we leave it today. Think about one small win you've managed to scrape together lately. Something minor that just subtly reminded you, yeah, I'm still capable. I'm still standing. Because that is exactly how confidence sneaks its way back into your chest. Quietly. Brick by heavy brick. And if you are having a day where you cannot find a single win on the board, where everything feels like a struggle and nothing feels like progress, listen to me. Those days count too. Survival is a win. The solid ground will come back under your boots. Maybe not by tomorrow morning, but it will come back. One brick at a time. If you've got a second, drop a comment down below and tell me about your brick for the week. What's one hard thing you managed to get done anyway? I read them all, and it's good for the rest of us to remember we aren't the only ones out here sweating over the masonry, and that every single one of those bricks counts.